as every tattoo, also black work have outlines. There are probably some of the modern kids making that full black sleeve and body stuff. They don't use any outlines anymore, but I am still a very traditional tattooist. For me, everything some sort of have outlines or like some guidelines or something which I do first. And especially when I do pattern work, when you maybe do dot flowers or stuff what is all in the dot in the black work niche, you will probably do outlines first. There's probably not too much techniques of outlines I can show you, but just to have a bit bigger understanding of what black work is, it's very good to understand that a line is a standing line. So let's say, need some ink. So let's say you make a line which is a standing line, so you see the line in the design. You really want to have a good line, point. But when you want to have a, like you make a pattern and it's a very big thing, and you just want to have the line as guidance, as you know, later on you will make black to the line. Then sometimes a line like this, which you see beside of my blowout on the fake skin in the beginning, like to have a line which is not really a solid line. It will be enough sometimes to make a black filling when you know you need to fill the black there, and you come with a magnum, and with the magnum later on, let me show you that quick. So when you later on with the magnum and you make the filling of the black, you can take the magnum and you can make the line very solid and black. When you fill to it, and you see we have a very straight cut and we have a nice filling from the line. So sometimes when I make the patterns, or mostly I don't need the best line. It always depends on what you do, because when you have a really big pattern and you have to worry about that, you have to make all the lines, that your clients sit long enough, and also the slower and more perfect you make the lines, the longer you need for the lines, the more pain it is to make the lines inside. So then maybe your client get more shaky and it's get very tricky to save the full pattern. That means you have to find some sort of compromises. And for myself, I know when I don't see the line at the end in the design, because we are making black work and it's a full black field and it's just the outline of a filling, which I don't see the outline at the end anymore. I know the outline don't have to be perfect. Especially when I know I have the magnum, I can make very nice edges with the magnum. I learned to make this, I can do it, so there's no point in making the best lines in the world. Another aspect is when you make outlines and you know he comes back the next time for filling, you can make the most solid outlines, it doesn't matter. But when you know you make outlines in the same session as you do the filling, then sometimes I even prefer to have not the best outlines, or to use a very open liner or something a little bit more soft. Because when I make too good outlines, the skin is a little bit more damaged than when I make just like a very fast line. And when I then go with my magnum to the side of the outline to fill it, I can really destroy the lines. And when it heals, then the outline looks almost a little blurry or not so good. So then also we don't have the best result. So we want really think about how the final piece looks and take this into consideration if how we make the lines. Another thing is, sometimes you have as I say before, a really big pattern and you just want to save it. Sometimes you have a design where you made the outlines by hand painted and you really have to save it, and you know the customer was sweating a lot, he was standing very shaky, so even your painted lines are not the best. Then it can help to just save the lines and then you can correct the lines afterwards. So it's different attempts of outlines in my eyes when it comes to black work. Is it solid lines which you see later in the design, or if it's like just some lines which you'd use for saving a design and saving the stencil, saving the thing, and if it's outlines which will be filled black later on. I personally have these two things when I make a pattern and I have to fill it later on, like fill lines. There are two options in my eyes. One is the fast lines, like I showed you, just to like get it in fast to save the design. You will use this when you have a client who you're not fully sure how good he sit in the session. The second one is the one I prefer. Is when I made pattern, I like to use a really massive line. So take a 15 or 18 liner, open it up and make a big ass solid outline. This will take you a little bit more. This will takes a little bit more time, a little bit more skills, but in my eyes, it's the nicer way, because when I make the filling, I don't have these small lines. So also I have less chances I cut the skin or the outline blur up or something like this. I have really big ass lines. I don't have to worry about this. And the filling, it's a lot faster for me, because black work can be very simple. To just make a big chunk of black, it's very simple, very fast, you don't have to worry much. But what takes most of the time for filling in black work is when you go to the lines. So making a big black pattern is a lot faster than making a small black pattern, not because of the black, even that there's more black in a big pattern, but because of the time it takes to fill to the line. And for myself, the bigger the outlines, the cleaner the outlines, the less I have to worry while filling and the faster I'm with the filling. So when it comes to dot work and stuff, it's a completely different chapter of black work, I would say. We will not mention it too much in this workshop because we have our own workshop as well, just for dot work. Just to mention quick, it's a part of the black work chapter, and you also can make outlines with dot work. You can make dot work fades in the outline and so on. But I would say this is not really classical black work, so we will not mention it much in this chapter. The different needles I use for outlines are mostly I use between 11 and 15 round liner. A lot of the times I like to open up the liner. So you just take a lighter and you melt the solder, and then the very spiky outline needle opens up to more like something like a round shadow. And I use this for making the lines a lot because it gives you a little bit more a fuller outline. It sometimes depends on the design. When I have just a couple of lines, because it's very simple black work, I sometimes use the 15 Magnum. I just use it sideways to make my lines. It's very questionable if that is the right or wrong technique in my eye, especially when I made very long lines and they have to be very straight. I prefer even to use a Magnum because the lines are always very, very perfect. You don't have a little shifty thing inside. You always have very nice and perfect lines. And to show you that quick, you just take the Magnum sideways. And as you see, we made a completely freehand line without a painting. It's a really straight line. All of this works. It's just managing a little bit around. And you obviously cannot make the shortest lines. And you also can use the corner of the line, the corner of the Magnum. And as you see, we can absolutely make outlines with a Magnum, even with a big 15 Magnum. Like this small field here, I would definitely be faster and cleaner with a round liner. So don't be lazy, use whatever makes the most sense. And sometimes it can have benefits to use a Magnum for the lines. And it's just one option. So in this design I will quick use the Magnum for saving the red lines. Also because then I don't need to clean my needle from the liner, and I can just save this, then save all the lines, and then we will make anyway the red with the Magnum. So we just quick save them. When I save lines like this in between a design where I know I have a pattern, a stencil around, I normally not whip them. I just let like make a little bit pressure on them and I let it dry like this, because these lines are anyway just for me to save. So we save all the red lines, and now we can start making the outlines. And same like every basic tattoo you try, wanna go through a complexer design like this somewhere from the bottom, so your hands are not constantly on the stencil. Remember, you have the stencil only once, so when you start to destroy it or smash it up, or let's make some lines in between and whip it, and you have the color all over the place and the stencil is destroyed, there's no way back and you will not have much fun. Always try to have the skin as stretched as possible, and I know sometimes it can be very uncomfortable position for your clients, but under the line he will have a nicer tattoo, it goes faster, so it makes absolutely sense. So we're halfway through with the lines. I will show you here now a little bit how I make my lines, especially like let's take this long one. This is the one I mentioned before. I want to make a shading later there, so I really want to have the line just very light. Normally I push the line, so for making a kind of a faded, just like bloodline, ghost line thing, I like a lot more to just pull it to me, so it's not so intense. And I just scratch the surface of the lines. I not try to get much in the skin. I just really try to scratch the line. For everything else, I try to always work in the same flow and go through a couple of patterns. And I always whip to the bottom. I really want to try to protect my pattern. As you see, the part of the outlines I done here, it's all dirty and stuff, but everywhere I work I make sure that I whip away from where I am, so all my pattern here I try to keep as clean as possible. I think especially in black work you make patterns, you make bigger stuff, you have sometimes lines painted by hand, so they are not as good from the stencil as it should be. So I try to be very systematic how I work through. I stand a lot, I work a lot. Normally my lie would be a lot higher, or I can change in the position. So I'm very mobile. I can see when I have a long line like this, I go to the side, I have a nice feeling here. And you see I have a good angle, so I can make a nice solid line. And I try to keep it very similar than to when you paint on paper. You always want to have a good angle where you can reach the stuff. And as these outlines, they are just holding the black, so they are not alone standing outlines. They don't need to be the best outlines in the world, because later on you will not see the outlines anymore. We will make the black filling, so we can correct and fix a lot from the line work. So beside of this, there's nothing really special about outlines from black work. It's pretty much the same. The more complex you go in the design, the more you should be able to make outlines. In my eyes, this is a pretty average pattern design. It's not too much lines. Okay to do, I would say, even when you are like not the best with lines, then just take your time. Just don't plan a stencil like this over the full front when you're not able to make lines confident and fast, because as you see, it goes very fast, that the pattern fade. Also in cases like this, sometimes the client starts sweating a lot, sometimes the client makes crazy stuff. That means the pattern will melt away, it will be very fast, really destroyed. Even when you work like me, very careful, you can see already that still here already it starts a little bit to wear off, and he not sweat at all. He lies here absolutely perfect, no shaking, no sweating, and I'm very fast with lines. So just always have this in consideration, not that you start a pattern way too big, the pattern is almost gone, you're like 10% with the outlines and you have no stencil, and then you start panicking, and then your customer panic even more, there will be more sweating and so on. So always start small. So we're done with the outlines. Notice we will make a proper cleaning. We don't have to worry about anything because we saved the red, we saved the shading line, we made all the outlines. When it comes to big pieces like this already, the cleaning can be always a real hassle. That's why I try to wrap everything very, very good and just let it soak in a little bit. No, we really want to have a clean body to really have an understanding of what we have done, how the lines look, how we go into the next steps. If we maybe have to touch up a little bit of the lines, if we fix some stuff. But as I mentioned before, we will fill all this pattern anyway, so it doesn't matter too much. So we will make a couple of little adjustments on the lines. In the first pass, you don't want to go too crazy because your priority should be to bring the pattern on the skin and save everything. And no, everything is safe. You don't have to worry about the pattern anymore. We don't have to worry about the stencil or paintings. As you see, everything is safe. So we really can make a last couple adjustments, and then we can give a little break to our customer. and then we think about the next steps.